This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description.
Along the west coast of Sodor was a branch line. It ran along sandy yellow beaches and through seaside towns, until it ended at a port where big ships came in. It was built a long time ago and had since fallen into disrepair. However, one day, the Fat Controller decided to reopen it, but he needed an engine to run it. Morning, sir.
Good morning, Doc. Your work in the yard these last few years has been good, and I think it might be time you need a change. What are your thoughts?
Oh, a change from pushing coaches would be nice, sir. What did you have in mind?
Well, how would you like to run a branch line of your very own?
Oh, yes. Please, sir. Yes, please.
Very well, then. I shall make the arrangements at once. I hope you will work hard and be a credit to me.
Oh, certainly, sir. Duck took great pride in his new branch line. Their responsibility delighted him. He enjoyed exploring every curve and corner of the line. This is just like being on holiday.
Well, you know what they say. A change is as good as a rest. But there's still a lot of hard work to do first.
Duck's driver was right. There was a lot to do. Stations had to be rebuilt, and the work took a long time. Duck could not do all the work by himself, so the other engines helped too. Donald and Douglas took it in turns to haul trains of heavy stone and materials up the line.
That's one load down, Duck. Dougie will be here with the next one soon.
Thank you, Donald. The twins worked very hard. Everyone did. But as time went on, they became exhausted. And on the worst days, rather grouchy.
What happened next? My side rod broke, just like that. So they took it off and,
Come on, Edward. No time to chit-chat with old fogies in the sun. There's work to be done. Get to it.
Well... Excuse me, Douglas. I would like a word with you.
Okay. What now?
Trevor and I are good friends, and we didn't much appreciate your comment earlier. You know, you and him have quite a bit in common.
Oh, do we now? And what would that be?
Scrap.
Oh, don't you dare mention that word. It makes me wheels wobble.
It does the same to Trevor. He was once destined for the scrapyard too, but the vicar and I saved him. Now he's really useful again. I'm sure you can relate, can't you, Douglas?
Aye, indeed. I'm sorry, Edward. I shouldn't have been so rude earlier. I'm just tired, that's all. The Fat Controller is running us ragged with this new line. I don't know which way I'm going half the time.
Yes, we're feeling it too. The Fat Controller could really do with another steam engine around here.
Aye, he could. And quickly. But yon knows there aren't many left over there.
Every engine on the island of Sodor has an origin story. Edward came to help build the railway. Henry was built to a flawed design and pawned off on Topham. Toby was saved when his old line shut down. Douglas stowed away to Sodor with Donald. But no one has quite as epic an origin as Oliver. Oliver is a tank engine like no other. He was going to be scrapped on the mainland, so he ran away and made a daring escape to Sodor, with all the odds stacked against him. He is quite brave and confident, but also not immune to his vices. Oliver is quick to anger, easily agitated, a little clumsy, and when praised, can get quite full of himself. Fortunately though, he has a conscience on his shoulder that keeps him seeing clearly, in the form of his own brake van, named Toad. Oliver works the Little Western Line with his colleague Duck, and the two are both quite proud of their Great Western roots. Oliver is going to be a very fun character to cover in Sodor's Finest, because it's not just him I get to talk about. We get Toad too, a double whammy. I'll be totally honest with you all. The plan was always to cover Oliver next after Donald and Douglas. Douglas is so integral to Oliver's origin story. They kind of go hand in hand, don't you think? So let's not waste any more time then. We'll begin our story back where it all began, in the West Country of England in the 1930s. Oliver is a 1400 class tank engine from the Great Western Railway. Designed by Charles Collett and first built in 1932, these 042 tank engines were designed for fast-running light passenger work and were a fairly common sight on the branch lines out in the West Country. They were known as auto tanks, for they were designed to work with auto coaches, allowing them to push-pull their trains in forwards or reverse. With a maximum speed of 80 miles per hour, the auto tanks were zippy little engines and were much faster than the diesel railcars that later replaced them. These engines are fairly recognizable designs, thanks in part to Oliver, of course, but also to the acclaimed 1953 comedy film, The Titfield Thunderbolt, which starred a 1400, number 1401. Of the 75 built, 4 were preserved, and one of them, number 1420, currently resides on the South Devon Railway, previously known as the Dart Valley Railway. While I don't think there is any official confirmation out there stating that this is the case, it's quite possible that Reverend Wilbert Audrey used 1420 as inspiration for a new character in his railway series, the 11th steam engine of the North Western Railway, Oliver. We'll talk more about 1420 later. Like the rest of the class, Oliver was built at Swindon Works and spent his working life out in the West Country, at one point working auto trains along the Golden Valley Line between Gloucester and Chelford. He worked the Chelford Auto Service with his own auto coach named Isabel, for there is a bell on her, you see, in which she uses to communicate with him when pushing. Isabel is Oliver's confidant, and he speaks rather highly of her.
When we go out together, I pull one way and push the other, and when I pull, I can see ahead. When I push, I can't, so Isabel keeps a good lookout and rings her bell to talk to me. She's clever.
When the Beeching Acts occurred in the 60s, several of the lines in the West Country had their motive power replaced with diesels, or were shut down entirely. With the announcement of his branch line getting axed, Oliver feared being put in line for scrapping. His crew couldn't bear the thought. So, as they were both bachelors with no local ties, they decided to do something drastic. To ensure Oliver's survival, they would escape the West Country and make a run for a sanctuary for steam engines up north, the island of Sodor. So, Oliver, Isabel, and a brake van called Toad disappeared one night. It wasn't a short journey, nor an easy one. They could only run when they couldn't be spotted, so the expedition took a lot longer than anticipated, several months in fact. They ran only at night when no trains were about, sympathetic signalmen clearing blocks of the line ahead for them. At times, Oliver would be hidden in sidings for long periods of time, fearing every minute a passing diesel would find them. At long last, they had nearly reached Sodor soil when Oliver ran out of coal near Barrow, just before crossing the border. With steam on its way out on BR's system, coal bunkers were uncommon, so till they could figure out a plan, his crew parked Oliver in a dark siding in the yard out of sight, and they waited. And this is where we first met him. In the third story of the book, Enterprising Engines, called Escape, Douglas stumbled across the scared Oliver on one of his runs to Barrow one night.
We're escaping to your railway, but we've run out of coal, and I've no more steam.
Is it from scrap you're escaping?
Yes.
Then it's glad I'll be to help you, but we're mun work first.
Having narrowly escaped scrap himself, Douglas was sympathetic to Oliver's plight and agreed to haul the cavalcade the rest of the way. Their crews coated Oliver up in grime and markings to make it look like he was being hauled away to the scrap line by Douglas. They had a near miss when leaving the yard, when a passing diesel spotted them and a suspecting foreman halted them.
Aha! A Western engine. His light flickered further back. A Western auto coach. And goods brake too. You can't take these.
Oliver's crew, hiding in the coach, hardly dared to breathe.
Using clever wits, they managed to get away and reach the safety of Sodor. They tried to hide Oliver at first till they figured out a way to tell the Fat Controller, but no secret could be kept from Sir Charles Hatt. He found out about Oliver and was taken aback by his epic tale. To the engine's delight, he announced he had made a deal with BR and would keep Oliver on the railway.
Oliver, Isabel, and Toad will soon be ours. Oliver and Isabel are just what we need for Duck's branch line.
Loud cheers greeted this announcement.
Oliver now works the Arlesborough branch with Duck, and with 2 Western engines running it, it quickly gained the nickname the Little Western, much to their delight. A long, stressful gamble Oliver played that paid off in the end. Before we get into Oliver's character, we should probably discuss the discrepancy with his number, because he's apparently worn several, and no one really knows which 1400 tank Oliver is. Officially, Oliver is the Northwestern's 11th engine, but like Duck, he still wears his Great Western number plates. Let's go back to 1420 on the Dart Valley. Again, there is no official confirmation that this is the case, but I think it's pretty safe to assume that Oliver was based on this engine. Audrey acknowledges the Dart Valley in the foreword of Oliver's book, and it's evident that photos of 1420 were used as reference for the illustrators. Subsequently, the number 1420 was transferred over onto Oliver. In some illustrations, Oliver's number is visible on his buffer beam, and the outline of 1420 can be made out. You can even make it out on his number plate here. Bizarrely, 1420 would gain a name much later, sometime in the late 70s. The very similar sounding Bolivar, likely named after a local branch line train service. It would not have worn the name Bolivar during Oliver's conception in the late 60s. So their names being so similar is nothing short of a crazy coincidence. Officially though, Oliver is not 1420, maybe because Audrey didn't want to change the history of a real preserved engine. So, as stated in the Island of Sodor book, Oliver's official number is 1436. This number comes from Audrey's own model of Oliver, which was made from a K's auto tank kit, its stock number being 1436. However, the real 1436 was scrapped in 1958, meaning it's impossible it could have lasted long enough to make a run to Sodor in the late 60s. The Island of Sodor book says as much, and even explicitly states it is doubtful whether this was the number actually allotted to him. So, in conclusion, it's all vague. No one really knows which 1400 Oliver is, and I don't think we're supposed to know. But that's never stopped fans before. The absolutely excellent Sodor Island Models has done an incredible amount of research on Oliver, and using context clues from the illustrations and Audrey's own notes, he deduced that the most likely candidate for Oliver was 1453. At long last, we can finally say we have as conclusive an answer as possible to which engine Oliver is. I highly recommend checking out his video on Oliver, link below in the description. With all this uncertainty, you'd think someone on Sodor would just, ask him what his number was. Once on Sodor, Oliver's life changed drastically. Sir Charles rescued another auto coach, called Dulcie, who joined Oliver and Isabel's auto train. The trio worked happily together, and Oliver sings songs to them.
Oh, Isabel's a funny coach, and so is Dulcie too. If I didn't look after them, they'd not know what to do.
Toad, meanwhile, admired Douglas for his courage and asked to become his brake van.
And Toad wants to be your brake van, Douglas. I'd hope for that. He and I'll do brawly together.
A big contrast to the TV show. Realistically speaking, though, this makes more sense. As a passenger engine, Oliver would have no need for Toad, which makes me wonder why Toad was even along for the escape in the first place, but we won't question that. As a goods engine, Douglas would have more use for Toad, and this is pretty poetic, considering Douglas's rocky history with brake vans. He had an awful time with a spiteful one in the past, only to gain one who respects him. Following enterprising engines, we learn more about Oliver in the next book, the aptly titled Oliver the Western Engine. So fun fact, this book was never meant to be solely about Oliver. Audrey had wanted to call it Little Western Engines, and this is apparent in only 2 of the 4 stories actually being about Oliver. The other 2 are duck-focused. It was very much meant to be a both of them sort of book, but the publishers wanted the title to have a character's name. Audrey, being the hilariously petty sort he was, called the publishers out in the book's foreword.
Dear M, we both wanted to call this book Little Western Engines, but publishers are stern men. They did not approve. I know. If Oliver gets uppish, we'll set Messrs. K and Ward onto him. That'll teach him. W.
Audrey's sense of humor never fails to amuse me. Here we get to learn a bit more about Oliver's character. In his first spotlight story, Resource and Sagacity, he shares his tale with the others, who are quite taken aback by it.
Amazing, Henry would remark. Oliver, said James, has resource and sagacity, put in Gordon. He is an example to us all.
Their admiration goes to Oliver's head, and he quickly becomes rather conceited.
Henry says I'm amazing, he's right. What do I care for trouble? I just push it aside.
To say that it's easy to inflate Oliver's ego would be an understatement. Oliver's arc in this book covers 2 things about him: learning to check his ego and his experiences with trucks. He deals with trucks for the first time ever here, which is a pretty interesting story arc for him. As a passenger engine, Audrey probably figured he'd have little experience with good stock, and played around with the idea. Headstrong as Oliver is, he thinks he can manage them, only for the trucks to, well, have their way with him.
One moment his rear wheels were on the rails, the next they had none, and he was bunkered down in the turntable well, with a deluge of ballast all round him.
And thus ended Oliver's conceit streak. Even Douglas, his savior, had some choice words for him.
Donald and Douglas spoke pungently in Scots, and the Fat Controller spoke pointedly in English. All 3 left Oliver in no doubt at all that so far from being sagacious, he was a very silly engine.
The trucks didn't take Oliver very seriously after that, and their teasing only worsened from there. This brings us to Toad Stands By, Toad's only notable role in the Railway series.
I'm worried, Mr. Douglas. This nasty spirit of disrespect for engines, where's it going to end?
I love how Toad is depicted here. They're referring to the engines as Mr., bothered by disrespect. He's rather mob boss-like. A pretty different portrayal than how the TV series interpreted him. Toad suggests the only way to get the trucks to behave is to assert dominance over their leader, Scruffy. And the plan works a little too well. Oliver only meant to put a strain on Scruffy to assert dominance, but he pulled a bit too hard, and he accidentally ripped him in half.
There came a rending, splitting crash. Oliver shot forward suddenly. Scruffy's front end bumped behind his bunker, while Scruffy's load spread itself across the track.
Okay, so he's definitely dead. I know it's all meant to be an accident, but I like to think that Toad knew this would happen. He knew Scruffy was old and rotten, but he too was tired of Scruffy's antics and used Oliver to carry out his own dirty work. Don't mess with Toad, guys. he'll put a hit on you. Following this, the trucks were petrified of Oliver, and rightfully so.
Take care with Mr. Oliver, they warn each other. He's strong, he is. You play tricks on him, he'll likely pull you in half.
So, credit to Toad here. His ruse gained Oliver a reputation. And with that, Oliver's arc comes to a close. Following this book, Oliver's appearances are very sparse, and he doesn't even speak again. He is present at Arlesborough when Duke is rediscovered, he's pleased with Wilbert's help on the branch line, and he's seen at Tidmouth Sheds a couple times. That's about it. As far as Christopher's books go, Oliver is barely a character. He's just sort of there. Oliver has an incredible origin story in the Railway series, but I think as far as his character goes, he's one of the lesser fleshed out. We learn that he could get cocky, and he now has a reputation with the trucks. But there's not much more beyond that, mostly due to his shocking lack of appearances beyond his book. I wish there was a story devoted to him and Isabel, showing a bit more of their relationship. We know so little about Isabel, and Dulcie too, that it's so easy to forget that they're even characters, and meant to be the main ones that Oliver works with. It's amusing to me that the one Oliver shares a story with is Toad, the brake van who he doesn't even work with. While I think there's a bit left to be desired with Oliver in the books, his epic escape to Sodor is still a great story, and very much seems like a love letter to the end of Steam, an engine's last daring chance at survival in Steam's twilight years, and against all odds, won. It's a trek that if it actually happened in real life, would no doubt still be talked about and discussed and researched by people online today. One that'd probably be covered in a lot of YouTube video essays. It's a prosperous, heroic tale, one that isn't based on any specific event in history. It feels more like one that Audrey just really wanted to tell. I think it's important to consider the year that the book came out, 1968, the year BR withdrew Steam traction. And in the midst of all that, here's a story where a little steam engine outsmarted BR and escaped their wrath. I'll always interpret it as Audrey almost giving BR the middle finger, if you will. He is a rarer character, but undoubtedly an enterprising one. Oliver, the engine who cheated fate and won.
Every so often, Donald and Douglas take turns hauling a midnight goods to a station on the other railway. It was Douglas's turn tonight. While he enjoyed a break from the branch line, he still felt uneasy about going to the mainland. Diesels crowded the yard when he arrived, growling and baying like hounds, watching him.
Oh, this place gives me the creeps. I'll be glad to get out of here. Huh? What's that? That sound like a steam engine. Is someone there? Or are you the Fat Controller's engine? Aye, I'm proud of it. Douglas is the name. Oh, thank goodness. I'm Oliver, and this is my brake van, Toad. Greetings, Mr. Douglas. Hiya, Toad. We've come so far, but I've run out of coal, and have no more steam left. So, we've been hiding here. You're a Western engine, aren't you? What are you doing out here? We're escaping to your railway. Is it from scrap you're escaping? Well, we're,
Yes, that's right, Mr. Douglas. Oh, it was awful. They were gonna cut Mr. Oliver up.
Well, say no more. It's glad I'd be to help you both.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Douglas. Thank you.
Hold your wish now. There's diesels everywhere out there. We mun work fast, so quick, do as I say.
Oliver made his grand debut in the TV series in Season 3's Escape, one of the most beloved episodes of the entire show. The story plays out pretty much the same as it did in the books. While taking a train to a faraway station where only diesels worked, Douglas stumbled across Oliver in a dark sighting.
We've run out of coal and have no more steam. But what are you doing? Escaping. From what? Scrap. I'll be glad to help you.
He agrees to help them, and the cavalcade make a narrow dash for Sodor. The visuals of this episode are really something else. So many shots using contrasty lighting and shadows to create an eerie mood. The main theme here is out of this world, a really triumphant orchestral piece that sounds unlike anything from Thomas previously. Series composers Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell were heavily inspired by the scores of famous escape films, such as the 1963 film The Great Escape, and more notably, Indiana Jones. As Mike once stated in an interview, when he and Junior first presented the theme to director David Mitton, Mitton was so taken aback by it that he invited everyone at T-Stage of Shepperton Studios to come listen to it, alongside the visuals on the big screen.
I remember when we did Escape for Oliver, Dave Mitton was so pleased with it that he brought all the crew in to the studio, and so they could listen to it, because they could see it with the visuals, and it was quite flattering for him to do that. So he really liked that one.
Apparently was the only time that Mitton was ever that impressed by the music, which is pretty high praise.
Was there any other times during the production that he did something like that?
No.
That's so neat.
Hearing these stories makes it so clear to me that they wanted Escape to be a big spectacle episode. A story about our heroes' brave adventure into a dark and gloomy unknown world. The Lion's Den, diesels and villains everywhere, and just narrowly making it out unscathed. The Indiana Jones-inspired score is so appropriate, and totally elevates what was an already awesome story. What a way to introduce this character. As far as Oliver's following episodes go, they're pretty faithful to the books. In Oliver Owns Up, he gets a big head from the engines praising him, which ultimately causes him to be dismissive with the trucks. And that goes just as well as it did in the original story.
Hello, Oliver. Are you being a good gracious engine?
They waited till the next season to cover Toad Stands By, and it is, once again, a very faithful adaptation.
I'm coming apart!
I absolutely love this cut to Toad's gleeful face after Scruffy's demise. This guy wanted Scruffy whacked, you cannot convince me otherwise. Unlike the Railway series, Oliver's bad time with the trucks didn't seem to end with Scruffy. There was a peaceful period for a bit afterwards, but no, it continued. In Season 5, the trucks continue to get away with bad behavior. They break away from him in Busy Going Backwards, and they rile him up in Oliver's Find, which had devastating results.
Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you, and Oliver bumped the freight cars hard.
Yeesh. Oliver and those turntables, man. Something that I want to bring up is how I've always interpreted Oliver's personality in the TV series. The show made him quite a bit more temperamental than he was in the books. Growing up with the US dub, I was always used to George Carlin's voice for him, in which he gave him a scratchy Brooklyn accent.
You think I can't manage, he said, huffily. Gordon knows better. He says I'm sagacious.
So I always kind of took Oliver as sort of like a tough guy and a small body type, with a lot of built-up anger, and was stronger than he looked. And perhaps that sort of influenced how I view this character. He's pretty quick to anger. He blows up at the trucks for teasing him. He gets pretty defensive when talking to Donald and Duck here. He gets impatient with Harold for being late.
Come on, Harold!
And even much later in Season 7's Snow Engine, he's a big old curmudgeon about snow.
I'm a great Western engine. I shouldn't have to shiver.
As far as an episode that defines who Oliver is, I think the best example of that would probably be Season 5's Oliver's Find. This episode is about Oliver growing bored with his work and finding solace in a break from his routine. We see a pretty wide range from him here. He is an entirely flawed character. Impatient, angry, and a big ol' klutz. But we sympathize with him because he is a depressed sort. Like all of us are at times, he's tired of his routine and needs a shakeup. That shakeup inadvertently being him getting lost in the night and crashing, and later getting found the next day. I'll be totally honest with you guys, I think the sum up at the end muddies whatever exactly the moral of this story is supposed to be.
Getting lost can be interesting, but being found is much nicer. Especially when it makes an engine feel really useful.
Like, what? But that aside, I think this was a really fun exploration of Oliver's character, showcasing all his flaws, desires, and what makes him tick. Another thing that I really love about this episode is Toad. How the TV series interpreted Toad is so fascinating to me, and how he's written in these non-Audrey stories totally changes the dynamic between him and Oliver. Isabel is non-existent in the TV series, and her role as Oliver's confidant was flat out replaced with Toad. Toad never becomes Douglas's brake van, and he stays glued to Oliver for pretty much all of his appearances. Other engines do use him on occasion, but it's very rare that one is seen without the other. The TV series depicts Toad as more of a polite, submissive type. His referring to everyone as Mr. is more of a formality thing.
Excuse me, Mr. Oliver. It seems to me that things are not well with you. If you forgive me for mentioning it.
With Oliver being a more temperamental sort in the TV series, Toad was sort of shaped into Oliver's conscience. A Jiminy Cricket sort, always on his shoulder, keeping him on track. Yes, pun intended. Or providing a funny comment on his situation.
That could have been a little smoother.
He listens to Oliver's problems, gives him advice.
Quite so, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to Sir Topham Hatt about your problems?
And tries to help him see the bright side of the mundane.
Just an observation, Mr. Oliver. Snow is magical. Pah!
It's not a one-way partnership either, as Oliver also lends a listening ear to Toad's troubles.
You're a very useful brake van, Toad. You help me brake, and you keep my freight cars in order when we go down hills. I know, Mr. Oliver, but it would be so exciting to go forwards for a change instead of always seeing things sliding away from me.
I can totally understand why the show ditched Isabel in favor of Toad. Toad is just a more fun character. His only story in the books showed a far more interesting dynamic between him and Oliver than anything with Isabel did. And as far as a character design goes, Toad's frankly kinda weird looking. He has a funny name, he's totally different to any other Rolling Stock character in the series at this point. To put it simply, he stands out. He's memorable. He's Oliver's funny, quippy, good-natured sidekick, always along for the adventure. He's like Oliver's own short round. Another Indiana Jones parallel for ya. As is the case with many of the other secondary characters, Oliver disappeared after Season 7, when Hit Entertainment overhauled the show and cleared house of the supporting cast in Season 8. He and Toad did not make a single appearance throughout Seasons 8 to 11, nor are ever mentioned or alluded to. Toad does appear in Season 8 as the circus train's brake van, which is pretty funny, although I don't think it's supposed to be him. I'm just thinking now how much more interesting this boring episode would be if that was actually Toad, and he was an active player. Imagine a Thomas and Toad adventure. What a wild pairing. Oliver and Toad did pop up again in Season 12, the final model season, though they don't do much. In Gordon Takes a Shortcut, Gordon gets lost on a branch line and stumbles across them.
Are you lost?
Would you like some help?
So is this where they've been the past 4 years? Out here just vibing on this abandoned branch line? Why are they here? Yeah, there's not that much to talk about here. As the final model season, this seemed more like a, let's bring them out one more time before they go away forever kind of thing. It was nice though, to see them again after being away for so long. Dare I say, I think Oliver is a much more interesting character in the TV series. His origin story is basically the same as the books, and they didn't change that much, but they just did more with him as time went on. Oliver is usually portrayed as an underdog type of character. This small engine always with some sort of gripe and all the weight of the world on his shoulders, and just can't ever seem to catch a break. From nearly being scrapped, to the endless back and forth power struggle with the trucks, to getting lost, to snow and ice derailing him. It's no wonder that he always seems so agitated all the time. But the key with Oliver is that he always pushes through and finds a way to come out on top. And most of the time, it's by luck or by accident. He escaped the scrapyard because he happened to be found by Douglas. He showed the trucks who was boss by accidentally tearing Scruffy in half. He found the old Sodor Manor again by accident. And he discovered the magic of winter, again by accident. It's his luck and his endurance that makes Oliver so likable. Like all of us, Oliver is flawed. He can get a big head, he's quick to anger, he's a bit clumsy, and sometimes becomes disillusioned or bored. He's a layered dude, but with all the charm and luck that we admire him for. Dare I say, Oliver just might be the most relatable character of the Thomas cast. So really, is it any wonder why Oliver is such a big favorite among the fans? And he also has a funny brake van sidekick always along for the ride with him. Now who wouldn't want that?
Both Douglas and Oliver's crews joined in. They chalked scrap everywhere they could.
No time to turn around. I'm on Ron Tender first. Are you ready for this? No turning back now. As ready as we'll ever be.
To Sodor or bust.
That's the spirit. Come on.
And they were away. They failed to notice a pair of diesels lurking in a nearby siding.
The schemers escaping.
Oh, don't mind them. They can't stop us now.
But Douglas had spoken too soon. A foreman had heard their warning, and they were stopped before they could clear the station throat.
Oh no, this is it. Shh, you keep quiet. Let me do the talking.
Aha! And just what do we have here then? A Great Western engine by the looks of it, and a goods brake too. Care to explain what you're doing with this knock driver, so far from home?
Aye, they're all for us. Taking this heap away for scrap we are. See for yourself.
Well, it seems in order, but it's strange.
Aye, it is, but we could tell you stranger.
So could I. All right, away, guard.
That was a near thing. Oh, we've had worse. You'll never believe what we've been through. We ran at night. Friendly signalman.
And Oliver told Douglas about their adventures as the cavalcade crossed the border to Sodor. Safe at last. It was daylight when their journey finally ended.
We're home. You're safe now.
Hold your wheeze, will ya? Yon's the works. We'll leave Oliver here. He should be safe for now.
Thank you, Douglas. There's no way we could ever repay you for what you've done.
Yes, Mr. Douglas. You're our hero.
Oh, it was nothing. You're the heroic ones. I run away here with my brother, but I could never have done what you did. I'd have been feared to do it all on my own.
I'm going to start this section by showing you all this tweet made by the official Thomas & Friends Twitter page. This is Oliver Erasure, and I will not stand for it, gosh darn it. This tweet was made in 2011, and I think it pretty much sums up Oliver's status in the show at this time. As far as those first few CGI seasons were concerned, Oliver just did not exist. But we all know how it goes. When the whole production team at Thomas changed in 2012 amidst the Mattel buyout, old faces soon started to return to the series. In 2014, a trailer for the movie that year, Tale of the Brave, came out. And literally 1 second in,
there he is!
Then Tale of the Brave came out, and Oliver wasn't in it. He was only in that one shot, which got used in the trailer. Oliver and Toad's big return was in the following Season 18, in the episode Toad's Adventure. The episode opens with a brief recap of their origin story.
And then there was that night of my daring escape from the scrapyard. What an adventure that was!
Oh no, Mr. Oliver, I was there too, remember?
This was really clever, actually. Having Oliver brag about his escape was not only a nice setup for the story, but also an efficient way to let new audiences know his backstory without just recreating it or having the narrator tell us. And for the fans, it's a nice callback to a beloved episode of the series. It ticks all the boxes for everyone. Well, all except for Douglas, who Oliver strangely never mentions. I'm sure that's because when this was written, they didn't know if Donald and Douglas would be coming back to the show again, so they just rode around that. But I guess we can just chalk that up to Oliver embellishing his tales. Fans were very happy to see Oliver again, but weren't all that happy with how he looked. Yeah, Oliver returned in that era of the series where the CGI modelers took a lot of liberties with the returnees' designs. Just take a look at Duncan.
Blech.
Oliver's overall proportions were very off compared to his prop, and he was notably smaller, which is ever so evident in this shot from Spencer's VIP. Now, to be fair, Duck's model is oversized, but the contrast is so stark here. Oliver looks so dinky. The CGI series tended to Flanderize the characters, push aspects of their personalities while neglecting other parts, and we've covered a lot of that before. Some got it worse than others, of course, and some others benefited greatly from having certain sides of them put in the spotlight. In my opinion, Oliver fell somewhere in the middle of it all. They did really amp up his boastful side in Toad's Adventure, a side of him that hasn't been all that prominent since Season 3. But I don't really take much issue with that. The bigger offense, in my opinion at least, is how dismissive they made him. Oliver's biggest appearance was in Season 19's Toad and the Whale. Now, in fairness, this is a really sweet Toad episode, though I would not say it's really that good of an Oliver episode. Oliver's character is a little all over the place in this one. Toad spots a beached whale, and when he tries to alert Oliver about it, Oliver doesn't believe him because of how far-fetched of a notion it is, and he even mocks poor Toad for it.
You'll never believe this, Duck. Toad says he's seen a whale.
That's not a very good joke.
But later, he discovers that Toad was right all along, and apologizes.
Oh, I'm so sorry I doubted you.
Now, this is all fine so far. He was a prick at first, but he learned the error of his ways. So at this point, it seems clear that Oliver's arc of this story is to learn not to ignore Toad and be a better friend to him. But then, they go and undermine this. Toad suggests an idea to save the whale, and Oliver just dismisses it.
Why don't they just pick the whale up and take it to Brendam Docks?
Oh, Toad. Let's just let the search and rescue team get on with their job.
Toad, now depressed, tells Thomas his idea, who thinks it's great.
Fizzling fireboxes! That's a brilliant idea, Toad!
Upon hearing this, Oliver exclaims,
"It is?
Oh my god, what a prick! Oliver is a pretty crappy friend to Toad throughout this one, and he never really receives any sort of comeuppance for it. A simple trick to fixing this would have been just to eliminate Thomas from the episode altogether, and have Oliver be the one to tell Topham Toad's idea. You know, showing that he learned from his mistake earlier and now has faith in his pal. And you know what? For all I know, this may have been in the original script, and Mattel or whoever sent it back and demanded Thomas be worked into it somehow. It would not surprise me. I think it's a total shame that this was Oliver's biggest appearance in CGI, because it's easily him at his most dislikable. I would still recommend the episode though, as it has a really nice environmental message, and treats its subject matter of keeping a beached whale alive pretty seriously. It's also like the only episode where Belle is used in a realistic way, so it's got that going for it. The writers definitely seem to favor Toad over Oliver. Toad got 3 lead roles in the span of 2 seasons. Oliver is in all of them, but he's only really a key player in 1. 2 of those episodes featured Toad being taken away by another character, and Oliver is just ditched for the majority of the story. To be honest, I can understand the gravitation towards Toad. As we talked about earlier, Toad is such a weird character, very different from anyone else. He's an overly polite Mr. Smee type, and he's rolling stock. He's not an engine, so right away he's sort of positioned low on the totem pole in this universe's class system, which in turn makes him a fun underdog to write stories about. Ones where he, the most unlikely of heroes, rises to the top and proves himself. And credit to the writers. I love these Toad stories, all of them. But it cannot be denied that he totally overshadowed Oliver. 2015's Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure took place heavily on the west coast of Sodor, so naturally, Oliver and Toad made an appearance. Now they don't do much, but I think what they did do with them was so marvelously clever. Marion the Steam Shovel, a newer character, meets the miniature engines, and confused by their size, believes that they're magic.
That's it! Magic! They must be. I bet they make wishes come true.
She meets Oliver the Engine, and later comes across Oliver the Excavator.
I'm Oliver!
Oliver?
Scatterbrained Marion becomes convinced that Oliver used the small engine's magic to become a digger.
You made a wish, and they turned you into a digger like me. Well, I don't blame you.
This has got to be one of the wildest connections the show has ever made. Ever since Jack in the Pack had been a thing, fans have always commented on how unusual it was that Sodor has two Olivers. Of course, one was made for a spin-off series, and was never actually meant to meet the engine Oliver. But that's the magic of Thomas and CGI. Now all these worlds can collide, and we actually got to see Oliver meet Oliver.
Oliver? Oliver? There can't be two Olivers.
Yes, there can.
And they even made a toy pack of this landmark moment. 2015 was frickin' unreal, man. How I wish we could go back to this era. After that, Oliver and Toad continued to make pretty casual appearances. A lot of Season 20 took place on the Little Western, which meant quite a few Oliver appearances. But nothing really worth writing home about. Blown Away featured Oliver the most prominently this season, and again in a sort of dismissive, condescending portrayal again, putting down little Skiff.
And anyway, you and Oliver are still out.
But we are considerably bigger and stronger than you, Skiff.
However, I'm okay with it here, as his comments seem to come from a place of caring about Skiff. He doesn't want the little railboat to get hurt in the oncoming storm. After Season 20 though, Oliver once again disappeared into the void. No appearances at all in Season 21, and only a quick couple cameos in the Big World era. Seems like a rather pitiful note to end this section on, huh? Well, actually no. We have one more episode to talk about, and that is Season 22's Samson and the Fireworks. In this episode, Samson returns to Sodor with his brake van, Bradford. It's Guy Fawkes Day, and a fireworks show is to occur at the castle that night. Samson, however, is scared of fireworks.
Nothing. Why should anything be the matter? Not afraid of fireworks? No, not at all. Just a few loud bangs. Nothing to worry about.
He ends up getting startled by fog detonators, which send him in a flurry and getting himself lost in the fog. Bradford consoles him though, and when night comes, they spot the fireworks at the castle in the distance. Using them as a guide through the dense fog, Samson overcomes his fear of them, and even admits that they're quite pretty, actually.
But they're not so bad after all, and most helpful. But I do wish they weren't so loud.
So at this point, you're all probably wondering, how is any of this relevant to a discussion about Oliver? Well, because this episode was originally supposed to be about him. As confirmed by series producer Ian McHugh in an email to a fan, the episode was originally titled Oliver's Fear of Fireworks, and was meant to be a part of the Season 21 lineup before that season was cut short for Big World Big Adventures. It would have been a story about Oliver and Toad, instead of the rather peculiar choice of Samson and Bradford. This is an episode that I think Oliver really could have benefited from in the CGI series. The only episode devoted entirely to him, exploring a new fear, and showing that more caring, supportive side of his partnership with Toad, to balance things out a little bit after the more antagonistic side we saw in Toad and the Whale. No exact reasons have ever been given why this was changed, but I find it being rewritten for Samson and Bradford at all to just be totally baffling. I mean, what was the point exactly? To push Samson more? A character by the time that this aired in 2018 they weren't making toys of anymore? Or to push Bradford, a character that was meant to be a one-off thing and had zero merchandise on the market? The show made so many questionable decisions in this era, and I would love to know more about the thought process behind this one. I feel like I've poo-pooed Oliver a lot in CGI, but I want to make something very clear here. I don't dislike him. There's a lot about him that I do love. I think Joe Mills's voice for him and Toad are spot on.
Once, Toad saw a whale stranded on the beach, and I didn't believe him.
I love how he gave Oliver a West Country accent, accurately reflecting his origins. I love how often they showed him and Duck working together. It really does feel like the two work a branch line together as partners, and not only sometimes when a plot demands it. I really like how Oliver is still put off by cold weather.
Not more snow. I just cleared the whole branch line.
Which of course is consistent with Snow Engine.
Oliver chuffed back to his warm, cosy shed.
We can all stay in our nice warm sheds.
Great! I like keeping warm.
And I love Toad a lot in general. He's one of those characters that really flourished in CGI, much like Daisy, Cranky, and Annie and Clarabelle. I think my criticisms of Oliver in the CGI series stem from the number of missed opportunities there were for him in this era. Toad got a lot of love, but Oliver needed some too, and I can't help but feel that they squandered him in favor of telling Toad-centric stories, and in Season 22's case, a Samson story. All of this making Oliver just come off as sort of an afterthought. And the one time that he did play a substantial role, he was rather unlikable. I really cannot emphasize how needed that fireworks episode was, and how much of a shame it is that Oliver and Toad were totally scrubbed from it. Regardless of it all, looking back though, I am just really grateful that they even bothered to bring Oliver back to the show after being away for so long. He was only in 3 seasons, which is kind of weird to think about. But hey, for only 3 seasons of appearances, he was pretty prominent in them. Even so, I can't help but wish that they had just given him a little more love. It's kind of crazy to think about how little Oliver actually appeared overall in the franchise. He only spoke in 2 books of the Railway series. He appeared in only 5 or so seasons of the Model series, and in only 3 seasons of the CGI series. By all means, Oliver is not a major character, but it's funny how we all consider him a main still. I guess because he's numbered. But, of the 3 eras, which do I gravitate the most towards? Well, I'm gonna give it to the Model series this time. I think the show made Oliver so much more interesting than he was in the books, and they did a lot more with him. They explored all new sides of his character, and making Toad such a prominent sidekick for him really did them wonders for storytelling. No matter how beaten down or disillusioned Oliver got, he always found a way to get back up, with a little courage, a little luck, and a little help from his friends. Our little Indiana Jones engine.
Douglas was careful with who he told his news. That night, he told Donald.
Well, well, where have you been all this time? You'll never believe what I've done, Donny. I came across a steam engine hiding at Barrow last night. A steam engine? There? Aye, he was escaping to Sodor, all the way from the western region, but he ran out of coal.
And later, Donald told Duck. You're kidding? Another Western engine? Here?
Dougie would never lie about something like this, Duck. It's an enterprising engine, that Oliver is.
And the next day, Duck told the big engines.
Amazing! This Oliver, he has resource. And sagacity. I've never heard of such courage from an engine before. He is an example to us all.
And the big engines told the others.
Well, I'll be that Douglas never ceases to amaze me. Good for him.
In no time at all, the grand story of Oliver's escape had reached all the engines across Sodor. large and small. When the engines all finally had a moment to meet together, they discussed the situation.
There's no way around it. The Fat Controller has to know.
Agreed. Douglas should tell him at once.
Me? Oh, it's too forward. He'd think I'm interfering.
Well, it worked when we sent Percy last time.
Yes, where's Percy now? Maybe we can send him again.
Send him to what, exactly? I sure hope you're all not planning a deputation again. You all know how I feel about interference. Well?
Beg pardon, sir, but, we all think we need another engineer.
Oh? Well, I suppose I can bring Diesel back. He's seemingly always available.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Never bring him back.
Sir, we had hoped for a real engine.
Well, they are rare on the mainland now, Gordon. And unless one escapes scrap, there's little hope.
But, sir, one has.
Yes, indeed. And thanks to you, Douglas, he is now at our works, safe and sound.
Sir, is there anything you don't know?
More than you think. The foreman at Barrow phoned me about a mysterious scrap train being brought over by you, and Oliver's crew told me all you did. I am very pleased with you, Douglas.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Oliver and Toad will soon be ours. They are just what we need for Duck's branch line.
The announcement was greeted with cheers. Oliver and Toad were fully restored and painted in great Western colours. And when the new line was finally complete, Oliver and Duck proudly took charge of it. The two are very happy on their line, though Oliver can get quite full of himself at times. And he often tended to embellish his tales.
There were diesels everywhere. I weren't scared, though. No, sir. Douglas was. But I just told him to keep quiet and let me do the talking.
Oh, how brave of you, Oliver.
Sure was. Sagacious is what Gordon called me. He knows best, of course, being a big engine and all.
He still has a lot to learn, though.
Stop!
He once had trouble with trucks.
No! Don't bother!
So, Oliver, tell me, is this what you meant by being a good gracious engine?
I take it that wasn't supposed to happen, Mr. Oliver.
Just a slip of the brakes, Toad.
And again.
Oops. Was that another slip of the brakes, Mr. Oliver? You think, Toad?
And again.
I'm coming to
Third time's a charm, isn't it, Mr. Oliver?
Oh.
He eventually learned sense, though, and is now a much wiser and cautious engine. The other engines teased the two at first and called their line the Little Western. Duck and Oliver were delighted by this, though, and their name has since stuck. So, the Little Western, it will always be.
For the first time ever, I'm going to shout out 2 videos for the pick of the week. And I'm picking 2 this time because I think they're both essential viewings for Oliver fans. The first is one that I spoke of earlier. It's What Was Oliver's Real Number by Sodor Island Models. Sodor Island Models research videos never fail to blow me away with how in-depth they are. This is the guy that managed to figure out what Diesel's BR number was. His video here on Oliver is just as impressive. Highly recommend giving it a watch to learn more about Oliver's roots, and a bit more on the 1400 class locomotives in general. The other video that I'm recommending is one that I think most of you have probably seen before. It's The Little Westerner by The Scotsman Returns. It's a few years old now, but it is a classic. One of my favorite fan productions out there, honestly. If you haven't seen it, it is a prequel to Escape, showing Oliver's life in the Western region, how everything changed when Diesels arrived, and what and who prompted him to make the escape to Sodor in the first place. It's a fun time, so go give it a watch. And if you've already seen it before, well, go watch it again. Why not? I want to give a big ol' thank you to all the voice actors who returned and took part in this video, especially the absolutely amazing Joe Mills, who voiced all 3 of his characters from Thomas and Friends here. So surreal hearing Douglas talk to Oliver. They never did that in the CGI show. But of course, Tom Marshall, Richard Browning, J.P. Wright, Trampy, and David Piper too. You all are fantastic, and I love working with all of you. And can't forget Isaiah, of course, who once again put together a killer score for this. I swear, this man just keeps upping his output for every new video. There are so many amazing themes in this one. The full uncut score will be released as its own video soon, as well as just the story segments themselves, as per usual. You all of course have my full permission to recreate or remake this video all you want, but I would recommend waiting for that dedicated upload, as it'll have no cuts between segments. As this is the first video of the new year, I think I'll use this time to give you all a quick rundown of the plan for 2025, instead of dedicating a whole video to it. I have made 29 videos in 2024, which is a pretty good amount. I did not realize I made that many. It's really hard to pick which of the lot was my favorite, but I think it's a toss-up between Edward's Sodor's Finest and the updated Railway Series timeline, for different reasons. Edward was the first major jump into creating full story segments for Sodor's Finest videos, and I have just enjoyed that process so much. I love writing those scripts, I love working with the voice actors, and I really love editing it all into place. It's just so much fun. That video was also all about my favorite character, so of course I'm going to be biased. And the Railway Series timeline for I think that is just the most professional video that I've ever made. All the info is correct, the map animations came out so well, I'm just overall so happy with how it came together. So just some things I want to cover and confirm for 2025. Okay, so 2025 is the big 80th anniversary of the Railway Series in May. And before you all ask, yes, I do have a plan to celebrate it. I will not be giving away any details at this time, but it, like the video that I did for the show's 40th, will be a special one. I can't let a major anniversary go by without doing something for it, right? The Thomas Retrospective. The Season 13 Retrospective is the next big video that I am working on, and maybe that'll be out before the end of January. Either way, it's in the works now. I've come to regret promising a certain number of episodes for each year, because I find that very hard to stick to. I enjoy making these videos when I feel inspired to work on them, and if I'm not really feeling like watching a whole season of Nitrogen Thomas in the moments, well then, I fear that the video will come off as forced. So instead of promising 5 retrospectives out before the year's end, I'll just say this. I'd like to get through at least all of the Nitrogen era before the year's end, so 2026 can be all the ARC seasons. And if we get through more than that, well then hey, even better. As for Sodor's Finest, again, I don't want to promise a certain amount for this year, as these videos have become a much larger production than they were when this series first started. I love how much bigger they've gotten, and how much of a collaborative team effort they are, but it does mean that they do take longer to make. I have quite a few more characters that I have ideas for, so I'll just say that this series is nowhere near the end yet. I mean, we still got Gordon to redo, we got Emily still, Daisy, Sir Topham Hatt, countless others, and I guess that other blue one that people keep asking me about. I forget his name. What's his name? More Sodor's Finest are planned for this year. As for other series on the channel, the Star Wars Ranked series. I get a lot of comments asking about this, and personally, I think this one is pretty much dead in the water. Star Wars is such an oversaturated market, and it's pretty hard to crack into. And frankly, I'm just kind of over it. My love for this series mostly revolves around those 3 original movies. I like the prequels too, to an extent, and there's a few shows I like, but it's not really something I want to go much further into here. My channel is a trains channel. People know me for Thomas, and I'd rather stick to that for now. I won't delete the video or anything, but a part 2 ain't coming out. Also, speaking of which, Pixar stuff. Now I love Pixar too, and the few Pixar videos that I have done have performed extremely well. But again, it's an inspiration thing. I made the Cars video because I had a lot I wanted to say about that franchise, and I made the Incredibles one because that's my favorite Pixar movie. I would like to do more, and I think I will eventually. But again, I have to be in the mood for it. I don't want to make one of these just because. I gotta be inspired in the moment. The end result always shows. Another will come someday, but don't expect one soon. When it comes to the kind of content that I really want to put forward on this channel, it's more the informative stuff. I made a lot of fun Thomas videos last year regarding lore and rather niche topics. The updated Railway Series timeline, histories of all the characters' bases, deep diving into Thomas theories and home media quirks, dissecting deleted scenes, tallying all the crashes, one fact about every episode, etc. This is the kind of content that I really enjoy making, because it's all informative and I feel it has a lot of rewatch value. I have a whole list of topics that I'd love to cover this year, so definitely expect more of this type of video. TUG'S trains will of course also continue, and you all know how this works. The next video will come once I've made more substantial progress on the layout. I'd also really like to get into modeling engines again. Something that I want to try this year is using an airbrush, and redoing some of my Northwestern engines. I think Thomas will be the first one that I redo, and when I do that, I'll be sure to document it for a video. I do have some other ideas floating around for potential series, but I won't promise anything until I actually start working on them. All I can say is that I want 2025 to be another packed year. I love my job dearly, I really do. I'm so proud of my channel and all the videos that I've worked on, and I am so grateful to be in the position that I am in today. I am also so grateful for all of you watching, so if you've made it this far into the video and haven't clicked off yet, let me just say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You all are the ones that allow me to keep doing what I do. Happy New Year's, everyone. Here's to a prosperous 2025. Bye-bye.